Good evening. It's great to be back here, ABAA, and welcome to the second part of the series Capturing the Cosmos. And today's talk is titled A Deeper Look into Deep-Sky Astrophotography. Yes. So it's been 70 days since we met here. A lot of new faces. I hope you guys went through that little PDF which I sent. If you didn't, no problem. You'll have a good 1 hour. So no problem, we'll go on with that. So it's been 70 days, almost 70 nights. I just have one question to ask for you guys. So what happened? So we talked about astrophotography, we talked about the basics of astrophotography. Did anyone here take an astrophoto or any kind of astrophoto or even went under the night sky till today? From the last time. Oh, nice. Good to see some people who have done that. But if you haven't, don't worry. The season has not yet completely started. We hope October, November, December, January, February, March. It's all clear. So let's just hope for that. And but thankfully, I was able to get one good night before in these 70 days. And I didn't do any deep sky astrophotography, but I was able to do a bit of astrophotography. And it was the night of the Perseus meteor shower. So this was, I think, a month and a half back, and this was taken near Mandya before all the problems went into. I mean, a lot of violence happening near Mandya. But before that, I was able to get a few meteors and on camera. But I was able to see a lot more. We actually counted around 100 meteors that night, and it was a phenomenal night. And I was able to get this photo. So this is a star trail image from that night. Very simple to do, very easy to do. And if you would like to know how to do this, I covered this in the first talk, but if you would like to know a little bit more, you can talk to me and we can look into that. So one thing which I didn't cover in the first part of my talk was why deep sky astrophotography. So this question has been asked to me by a few people, and I always point them to this photo. This photo. So, one second, I'll reduce the brightness a bit so you can see it. So, this is an image of Markarian's chain. It's a chain of galaxies located in the constellation Virgo, and a lot of big galaxies here. So, you can see some, I'm sure some of you can name some of these galaxies. But this has gone through annotation, the process of annotation where these circles, and if it's a little more clear, we can probably see the number, the name of the galaxy. And one thing which you should notice is all these little blue circles are also galaxies as well. It's just not very defined in the screen, but if I give you a print or you see it in my laptop a little later, all these small blue circles are galaxies as well. So this image contains a huge number of galaxies. And I really hope you know what a galaxy is. So here are some close-ups of those parts. Like if you look at this part, we're going to be looking at this part here. So all these are galaxies. So if you can actually notice, you see a spiral galaxy, a lot of irregular shaped ones. And all these are galaxies. Just remember that.
What did you call this? Sorry.
Markarian's chain. Markarian's chain. So again, this is another part of that same image. You can just see all these are galaxies, just filling up, I would say, about 200, 400 pixels in this image. And here's a similar image of the Sunflower Galaxy and a lot of other galaxies in this field of view as well. So you can see just littered across your screen, so many galaxies. And I'm sure all of you have seen this photo. If you haven't, this is actually a photo of Earth here. It's called the pale blue dot. It's taken by Voyager from near Neptune. And Carl Sagan, I'm sure most of you have read this or seen this, have read this. I'm just going to talk about it for a bit. So that dot, that's here, that's home, that's us. On it, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever lived, who lived out their lives, the aggregate of all our joys and sufferings, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilizations, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every hopeful child, every mother and father, every inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived here on a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. So if that didn't send shivers through you, this photo really should. So that was talking about Earth, a small mote of dust. And that's just a planet in one of our planets of our star. And one of the stars in our galaxy, there are apparently 400 billion. And just look at this picture. How many galaxies are out there? So this is why I do deep-sky astrophotography, and I really hope you guys can pick up that spirit to do deep-sky astrophotography. You really can't try to do, get the same feeling with planetary or solar. I'm sorry if someone does it here, but to me, it's very hard to get that same feeling of, that frisson. I think that's the word for it. If you actually look at it. So that's why I do deep-sky astrophotography. And if anyone asks you, why not waste? Why put so much time and effort and cost into this equipment? You show them that photo. I'll give you a link if you want. And you explain to them the story. And you tell them why we do deep-sky astrophotography. So on that philosophical and sentimental note, let's begin. So it's going to get a little more technical from here on. So let me know anytime if it's getting boring or anything. I'll try to make it a bit more interesting. So let's imagine we are at a dark site. There is no pollution of Bangalore, no sounds, nothing. We're where there's clear skies, and we see this equipment before us. So we see a tripod, we see a mount, we see a telescope, we see a camera, we see Autoguide, we see a lot of components here. So let's look at each one of these components in a little more detailed manner. So the first component is the tripod or the pier. So this is the component on which everything rests on. The mount rests on it, the telescope indirectly rests on it, everything rests on this piece of equipment. And they come in many shapes. A pier is basically a stable version of a mount, a much more solid, much more stable version which is not so portable. It's meant for remote observatories or observatories where you don't move the telescope a lot. So your crucial part of your kit is this tripod or mount. If you have a very wobbly tripod or mount, your entire process is going to go wayward. So it's very important to have a good quality mount or a tripod. A tripod or pier. So some of the important things we should do when we're setting up the tripod is making sure the tripod is level. So this is very important for the process of polar alignment, which we'll be covering a little bit later. So, and the second thing is we should make sure we place our tripod wisely. So before you go to a dark site, it's always important to plan the objects you want to do beforehand. So if you're going in November, you will know that Andromeda is there, Orion is going to be there. So plan your objects well in advance before going there. And make sure you set up your tripod while you look at what objects you're planning. So if you're planning Orion, make sure east is clear. If you're planning any other objects, make sure that direction is clear, free from light pollution, and place your tripod wisely. Because once you place your tripod, that's that location. You can't change it. It'll be very hard to change it later on the night. I'm sure some people have faced that problem also. So another important thing is make sure you get a good view of Polaris or the North Star from where you're placing the tripod. Trees should be avoided. So the next part of the kit is the tracking mount. We covered a bit about this in the first part. We just did a little bit about mounts in general, but we'll be going a little bit more deeper than that. So the mounts I would like to talk about today, the tracking mounts I would like to talk about today, there are three basic types. The first is a barn door or Scotch mount, which is a very do-it-yourself kind of mount. This is a mount which you can build in your spare time, take it up as a project, and you can easily accomplish this task. The second is a similar package, something which is very portable and relatively affordable and meant for smaller telescopes and lenses in general, camera lenses. And the third is the German equatorial mount, similar to the one you see here, and it's more sturdy and it takes a more heavier load. So the first, we'll be talking about the barn door mount, which looks something like this. There are many variations, many types, but this is a very simple implementation of that mount. So it basically consists of two pieces of wood, and one side is hinged, one edge is hinged. And that hinge is actually the polar axis of this small tracking mount. So that has to be aligned to the North Celestial Pole. You know where the North Celestial Pole is, right? Near Polaris, the star. So once it's aligned, any motion on this axis is technically in rotation, you're in accordance with the Earth's rotation. So I hope this is a little bit clear. I don't have a working model of this mount to show you a little bit more, but it's a very simple mount. There are tons of designs online, and you can easily build this one with very few components. This side has a small motor to it, where it pushes the top wood piece at an angle. So that simulates the rotation of the Earth, and you can get long exposure shots with this very simple mechanism. And if you attach a bird head on top, you can move your camera to whichever part of the sky and image small objects or even larger objects and plenty of objects in the sky. So this is how the mount looks, how the mount works. Very simple mount. If you like a very interesting design, I found one. I would love to share it with you. You can talk to me after that. We can do that. The second category of mounts are very popular nowadays. They're picking up traction, and only recently there are a lot of different designs are coming up. The first one is the AstroTrack, which technically has been around for quite a few years, and it is a little more expensive than the others. It's about $600 to start with, but it's very, very portable, and it has a very good load capacity. And the second one is a Ioptron Sky Tracker Pro. That one is a Skywatcher Star Adventurer, and this is a Vixen Polar. And all these, their main characteristic is they are very portable. So say you're going on a trek to plenty of hills around Karnataka, and it's so beautiful. So you really don't want to carry this giant telescope and a giant mount with you. You want to enjoy the trek. So these come in there. So if you can easily fold and keep most of these in your backpack, and most of these you can even put AA batteries, and you can use this in the field. And they actually provide very good acceptable tracking for lenses less than 200 millimeters. So if you have a 200 mm lens, and 200 mm lenses can capture a wide array of objects in the sky. So you're not limited in any way. So these mounts are actually very good to start out with. So if you're looking to get into Deep-Sky Astrophotography, this is a wonderful place to get into it. And they're relatively affordable, $350 to $400, but when you bring them to India, again, customs and a lot of things. So if you have a good friend in the US who's willing to get down, this is a good option for you. Sorry if anyone's in customs and things like that. Yeah. So this is an example of a shot taken by Stefano. This was on the Ioptron site. So it's of Orion region. It was taken with the same equipment, which is about $350. And that is the $350 to $400 is just the mount itself. So you have to invest a little bit more on the tripod and the camera to get shots like this. So this is a phenomenal shot. With such a relatively simple equipment, you can actually do plenty more with this same kind of focal length and configuration. So this is a good place to start out with. Even objects like this. Again, this was taken by Ioptron Sky Tracker Pro. The next mount we'll be talking about is a German equatorial mount. So these mounts focus on stability. They take much larger telescopes, much larger payloads, and they can provide accurate tracking over long periods of time. So they come in very different varieties, many different manufacturers, many different countries manufacture this, signifying their quality. So the first one is an Ioptron, which is a relatively new brand, but coming out with exciting designs, and they're quite affordable to everyone. The second one there is the Astrophysics Mark 1 GTO. A wonderful mount, and I'm sure Satya's already laughing there. So it's like somewhat like a Ferrari of mounts, I would say. And this is a Paramount BISC, software BISC Paramount MX, and that's Astrophysics 3600 GTO that we kept on. So all these mounts, if you actually look at them, they are manufactured to carry heavy loads. So but they're not very portable. They require, we'll be looking at it. So they're well suited for astrophotography. In the first part of the series, we saw how an equatorial mount can be used for astrophotography. When you mount a telescope or a camera on an equatorial mount, German equatorial mount, the field of view will be same. It will not change, will not rotate, will not differ over a long period of time. It is meant for astrophotography, these kind of mounts. And but one con is that they require accurate polar alignment and balancing. So we'll be looking at these two words. I'm sure you know what balancing is. So if you look at the telescope, this side is about 9 kgs. The telescope weighs 9 kgs. So you need to balance it approximately and even precisely to ensure smooth tracking of the telescope. So there are two counterweights are provided here, and you can move it up and down to achieve a proper balance. So that's balancing. We'll be looking at polar alignment a bit later, and they're very versatile. So, okay, just one second, let them come in. Okay, till now, are all of you clear? Any doubts? Any questions? Any comments? If you want me to talk, a little slower, faster, anything, let me know. Yes?
We've seen on the net that even the observation systems, they have got a mount which allows you to track
Yes.
for about a period of about an hour, and after which you need to reset.
Okay.
What type of mounts are those? How are they
Are you talking about Dobsonian mounts? Motorized Dobsonian mounts?
motorized ones?
So, motorized.
Go to
Johann,
Yeah.
I think he's referring to equatorial platform for the Dobsonian mouse.
Yeah, so that, if you want, we can talk about that at the end of the thing. This is it's a little tangential to what we're talking about here. But we will definitely talk about it. And so these mounts are very versatile. So what do you mean by versatile? Like this, I can replace any kind of telescope or any kind of lens with my current telescope. So if you're looking at a fork mount, a very similar mount to this, it's very restricted to the type of telescopes you can use. But an equatorial mount is very versatile. Most types of cameras, most types of lenses, most types of telescopes will fit accurately and stably on this kind of mount. But one con to this is if you have to perform a maneuver called meridian flips. So I'll show you how that works. You can probably put on the light in just two minutes. So imagine you are. Oops. Yeah, it's fine. So imagine you are imaging an object here, where the telescope is pointing, and slowly over the night, it's going to move. It's fine. The object is going to move across the sky. There is going to be a time where no problem. There's going to be a time where the object crosses the meridian. After which, let's say now this is the time when it's going to cross the meridian. So after which, it cannot keep continuing tracking. If you actually notice, it's going to hit the mount and the tripod itself. So when you reach this time, you have to do something called a meridian flip. So you have to turn the entire mount like this and point it to this. When you cross over, you can see it from this side as well. So that is called a meridian flip. And while it looks pretty easy, it's actually quite easy to do. It can be very time consuming and very difficult to do in the dark. And especially when it's quite late in the night, about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, it's going to be very hard to do and quite hard to get the framing right of the shot after you do that. So this is a con of an equatorial mount. And the last, one more con I would say is it's not suitable, not very convenient for visual astronomy. So if you're doing visual astronomy, you will be using an eyepiece a lot. You'll be constantly going back to the eyepiece. And because this telescope moves all over the place, the eyepiece is going to be in a very awkward position. So while you will get accurate tracking, you will have to bend, you will have to be in a very, very different position for visual astronomy. And this can be seriously hindering for if you want to actually observe the object over a long period of time. So now let's look at the concept of polar alignment. So in simple words, polar alignment is making your mount's polar axis parallel to the Earth's rotation axis. That's exactly what, very simply, that's what it is. But a lot of beginners face tremendous problems when they come to polar alignment. They always see it as a big problem, which is, yeah.
We just show the polar axis on the mount.
Yeah. You can put the light on. So we talked about this in the first part of the talk, and this is the polar axis. If you look through this hole and it's coming out, imagine a line is going through this and coming out this side. That's the polar axis. So that polar axis has to point to the north celestial pole, very close to the pole star. If it points to that, we are parallel to the Earth's rotation axis. Is that clear to everybody? So once we are parallel to that axis, if we move along this direction, if we rotate along this axis, we are rotating with the Earth, technically. So we can take long exposure shots. The field of view will be constant over a period of time. Is that clear? Any doubts in that area? So that's the polar axis. This side is the right ascension. And this movement is the declination. So you can set the declination and the right ascension to find any other objects in the sky while you're polar line. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah. So a lot of people, there are a few bolts by which you can polar align yourself. You can move these bolts so that your mount moves up and down, left and right, so that your mount is correctly aligned to the north celestial pole. So moving that is actually polar alignment. But by the process, the mechanism by which we do it can be a bit hard sometimes. So we'll be looking at some methods to carry it out. The first one is using the polar scope of the mount. If you noticed, I showed you a hole when I was explaining the polar axis. That is actually the opening for the polar scope. So if you look through the other side, there's a small reticle which has a view similar to this. So in that view, you'll see some familiar constellations to help you find the Polar Polaris, and you'll see Cassiopeia and the big Ursa Major and things like that. So if you can place Polaris, the star, into this circle, exactly into this circle, you are approximately polar aligned. It's not very accurate. It's suitable for visual astronomy and imaging with wide-angle lenses. But you are approximately polar aligned. You're approximately parallel. Your mount's polar axis is parallel to the Earth's rotation axis. So this can be tried for deep-sky astrophotography, but it's not very accurate. So you get tracking up to 2 minutes with 1000 mm focal length like this, but after that, even 1 minute is actually quite kind of big. So 2 minutes will be a bit hard to do, but you will not be able to get more than that. So to be more precise, there is a method called drift alignment. So even saying these words will send a few, fears into a lot of astrophotographers and even visual astronomers. So why? There has been this, stigma around drift alignment for a long period of time. It seems like a very hard thing to do. And most people I talk to don't even attempt to do drift alignment. But when I first started astrophotography, from my house, you can't see Polaris. So I never even used the polar scope. I immediately went to drift alignment. And thankfully, I came across this very easy implementation of drift alignment. And I'll explain that to you. So it was documented by this person named Robert Weiss. I'm not sure if he came up with it first, but it's a method of polar alignment by error correction. So what you do, you can put on the light actually. So this is the mount, this is the telescope. Everything has to be placed before you attempt drift alignment. You first have to point your telescope due south. So normally your mount will be pointed towards north. This axis has to be pointed towards north. So your telescope itself has to point towards south. So something like this. And it has to be along, you have to locate a star close to the celestial equator or 0-degree declination, which will be roughly from Bangalore, it will be somewhere a little lower than this. So once you locate a star, make sure you're focused a bit. We'll be looking at focusing a little more in detail later. So you have located a star and it's in the celestial equator. So what you do is with your mount hand controller, you move your axis, your RA buttons, west and east on your mount, left for 60 seconds and right for 60 seconds while you're taking a 120-second exposure. I'll just show you how it looks. Yeah, you put off the light. You draw. So once you complete the exposure, you'll see an image like this. So the star starts from here. You can give about 5 seconds. You can let it be without moving your controls here. So 5 seconds you let it burn in the star for a reference point. And then you move 60 seconds here and move 60 seconds back. So this angle of deviation is actually the error in your polar alignment. So it's not hard. Right now it's quite easy. We're just sitting and moving the mount back and forth. It's quite simple. It takes 1 minute 25 seconds for one shot, and you have to repeat this iteration around 5 to 6 times. So if you see this you notice there is an angle of deviation. So once you see an angle of deviation, you have to make corrections to your azimuth bolts. So you can put on the light one more time, sorry. So these are the azimuth bolts, one here, one here. So this will move the entire mount left and right. Yeah, you can put it on. So you make adjustments to those bolts until this angle of deviation reduces. So you repeat this process again and again. Once the two lines coincide, like how it's coinciding here, you are polar aligned with left and right axis, like azimuth axis. You repeat this process, but instead of using south direction, you use east or west. And same 0 degree declination, you find a star. And you repeat this process, but make corrections to the altitude bolts. So again, you'll see an image like this, and you make appropriate corrections to the bolts. One last time, yeah. So this is the azimuth bolts. This one here, and one in the back. Probably after it finishes, you can come and look and show you, explain in detail closer what the bolts are. Yeah. So again, you make corrections to the altitude bolts, you reduce it, and you make the lines coincide once more. So once you do that, you are polar aligned in both azimuth and altitude. You are very, very precisely aligned to the north celestial pole. So once you do this, I was able to achieve 3 minutes of exposure with a 1000 mm telescope on this EP6 mount, which is good. Without guiding, we'll look at what guiding is a little bit later. So that's good. That's an acceptable, good amount to use, good shutter speed you can use. So that is accurate polar alignment. It is very, very crucial for astrophotography to have accurate polar alignment. You can really simplify your night, your entire night, if you spend a good deal of time in the beginning of the night doing accurate polar alignment. If you do a very rough job at the start, you'll have to come back and tinker with it the entire night. So do it well at the start and get it right. And this same polar alignment, what we're doing now, applies to all the mounts we saw before. So even the Bando mount, we are roughly aligning it there because we're using tiny lenses. We're using maximum 50 mm, 100 mm there. And the AstroTrax and the Skywatch, all those mounts we saw, portable mounts we saw, they also have a rough method of polar alignment. But you can again make it a lot more precise with this method. DARV or drift alignment by Autoguide. So we'll be looking a little bit more into the workings of an equatorial mount, a German equatorial mount. It has two main shafts, the declination shaft and the RA shaft. The RA shaft is the one doing most of the work and tracking it across the sky. The RA shaft is connected to an RA worm wheel, which is in turn connected to an RA worm, which is in turn turned by a motor. So all these components are all machined. It's machined by people. So this is a Chinese mount, so it's actually machined by people in China. So the quality of these gears, quality of the worm, all have to be really precise for accurate tracking. But because costs have to be low, a lot of compromises have been made in the quality of the worm wheel, quality of the machining and the worm and the motor itself. And the motors are pretty good, but the worm wheel and the worm gear. So even if there is a tiny imbalance in one of the tooth or the teeth of the worm gear, there can be repercussions in your image. Your image will have trails. And because this periodically moves, periodically you will see an error in your image. And this concept, this problem drove me nuts in February 2015. So back then I was still looking, I didn't have an Autoguide, I didn't have a lot of this other components to help me out. I just had the telescope and the mount. So every third photo of mine used to have trails in the image. And I lost it. I'm like, what's happening? I actually moved, I thought it was vibrations in the ground. I moved my setup somewhere else, and still the problem was repeating. And finally, I narrowed it down to this problem called periodic error. There was a small imbalance in one of the tooths somewhere, or many tooths maybe, which caused error over the entire period of time. And you can replay this over constantly again and again. So you can minimize periodic error by this method of periodic error correction. But a lot of people don't use this because you need perfect synchronization of hardware and software, which is very hard to do in these kind of mounts and so on. So there is a better solution. I mean, it's still a hot topic to debate on, but there is a better solution called guiding. And guiding to me and to many people has made our lives so much easier. It has made 4 hours of setup into probably 2 hours of setup. So I will be looking at what this concept is. So there are different types of guiders, but they follow the same principle. A guider locates one star, any star in the field of view of your telescope or another guide scope you attach, and there is either a reticle provided either by hardware or software, and the mount's job is to keep that reticle, the star in the reticle, in the crosshair. It's not supposed to drift out or here and there. If it drifts here and there, there is some kind of error in your tracking. So that is basically what guiding does. There are different types of guiders, we'll be looking at it in a little more detail. But the two main types are off-axis guider and guide scope. An off-axis guider is a device like this. It consists of a prism here, which intercepts some of the light which the telescope gives and reflects it this side, which is basically you're taking a light path and you're pushing it to an external guider. So you can attach an eyepiece there, or you can attach another camera there to see if the star is shifting left and right. Or you can also use a separate guide scope itself, mounted on top of your telescope or in the finder of the telescope. So that's what I use, and you can put on the light mode. So this is the guider, the Autoguide. Yeah. So if you can't see it, you can probably come later and check it out. Yeah. Thank you. So there are two types of guiding: manual guiding and auto guiding. So manual guiding is, I would say, a really impressive skill, which I don't know, maybe not a lot of people do today. It involves you as a person to look in that guide scope throughout your exposure of the shot and make corrections to the RA index while the shot is being taken. It's a very, very hard thing to do. You require a lot of patience, but that's what they used to do before an autoguider came along. An autoguider is a small camera with a very, very small field of view, and it's basically, it keeps the star. Yeah. So this is a software called PHD. It sounds very professional, but it actually means push here dummy. It's designed to make it very simple to guide. So you get an interface like this. You can select a star and you can keep your mount, you want the star to not leave that field of view, that crosshair. If it leaves the field of view, the autoguider sends signals back to the mount to move it back here. This is the principle of auto guiding, which has made life a lot simpler. So not only periodic error can be eliminated with this, but even if you're using a rough polar alignment, even that can be eliminated with this auto guiding. So before I used to spend a lot of time getting my drift alignment right, but nowadays I just, okay, it's fine, your guiding will take care of it, because I'm not going to image more than 5 minutes or 10 minutes max. So this is the interface of guiding, and this graph here indicates the corrections, the signals which are applied to the mount. The blue is the declination, RA corrections, and then red is the declination corrections. So if you have a very smooth graph, like without any spikes and without any high amplitudes, your tracking is good, your mount is tracking well, there's no wind, there's no sudden corrections which have to be made. There have been many occurrences. This graph can be very, very useful. In most of the nights, this is what we do. Like the entire night we come and sit and look at the graph. I'm sure many astrophotographers can agree here. So you can see that this is a lot of spikes here, and that means there's some problem. Maybe it's wind, maybe it's someone coming here and doing this. So if you actually do this next to your telescope, you can actually see a spike in the graph. That means there's a correction being applied. It's that precise, that much of tolerance, very little tolerance is there in astrophotography, Deep-Sky Astrophotography. So again, an autoguide has made life a lot easier. But I read this online. It talks about manual guiding. For really serious long exposure manual guiding, a Zen-like concentration had to be maintained that blocked out the excruciating physical pain of sitting motionless for long periods of time in the freezing cold and staring at one faint star while the beauty of the rest of the universe went by overhead unobserved. So it was a very crucial process. And now our exposures are 5 minutes, but during the film days, exposures used to be 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 50 minutes, 1 hour. So imagine that 1 hour, 1 star. That was, yes.
I think this is best. The example for this right here is Mr. William.
Yeah.
I think he still does this. I've seen him do it
Yeah.
over a decade ago also, and he's probably the best example for this manual guiding.
Yeah. So it's a different kind of skill which not many people do today because of auto guiding, but it's a thing of beauty. Maybe we should try it sometime. Yeah. So that's manual guiding and auto guiding in the whole. A lot of errors can be solved by this process, and if you would like to make your life easier at the start, it's good to invest in something like this. And apart from buying this auto guider, you can also make your own guider. So you can just use a normal guide scope, camera lens, anything, a wide angle camera lens, basically 200 millimeters, something like that. And you can even attach an old webcam to this. Somehow find a way to attach your webcam to the guide scope, and you got yourself an auto guider. You make appropriate connections to your laptop, which provides really interesting open source software for you to control your mount. You just need a mount which is capable of auto guiding. And most mounts today have that feature inbuilt. Even some of the portable mounts we saw, AstroTrack, Skywatcher, Star Adventure, all have auto guider ports. So this is a very interesting tool to do astrophotography with. And as it's getting a little bit too monotonous, I thought I'd tell you a story of the Rosette. Have any of you heard of this nebula? Rosette Nebula? Yeah. Okay. So some of you have heard of it. Yeah. Nice. So ever since I started astrophotography, I wanted to photograph this object. And the first time I photographed it was in November 2014. This is the first time I went to a dark sky with my telescope. I didn't know, I have never seen Polaris before this. So I went and I thought I could image this the first night. So this was my image, you know. You can technically see a bit of Rosette Nebula here, and if some of you have seen it before, you can identify a bit. But this was Rosette Nebula for me. This is a single unprocessed image. And you can see the trailing. Rosette Nebula is a very faint nebula. You require a good deal of exposure for at least 5 minutes for one shot. So no way without guiding I was able to get it. You see the streaks. So this was in November 2014. And I didn't give up. I tried again. This was in January 2015. And again, now you can see a little bit more. My photo alignment has increased a bit more, and I can see some data here. You can see a bit of the filaments here. And it still but looks just like a collection of stars. And I imaged it in December also, but I was not able to find that photo. So this is in Jan 2015. And again, I tried in February 2015. Actually, you can see a bit in this monitor, but you can see the stars look a little bit more clear here, but it's still not there. This is still a 3-minute exposure. I was still not able to capture the nebula. But finally, I bought an autoguider in the end of February of 2015, and had a good chance to go to Kemangundi, Karnataka in March 2015. And finally, the shot looked like this. Yeah, so this is finally after, this is a stack of shots again. So I was able to get the nebula. Again, this is far from perfect. I'm going to try this object again this year to make it much better. And you can see much more filaments. And I would say a good role of this shot is because of the auto guiding. And so it can really help you to take your game up to the next level, is auto guiding. And like he suggested, maybe if you want to try manual guiding, that's an added challenge, and you can get some good shots maybe with that as well. So we have right now covered the mount and the tripod. Any questions so far? Any questions? Any doubts? If you want me to go slower or faster, let me know. Yes?
If
yeah.
Start this.
Okay.
Guys, we have an ABAA register. Just as you talk progress, might be passing. Where is it, Sagar? Sagar?
There won't be any texture mainly. That is also a big issue which people face. Where if you're using a very big guide scope, this can be quite heavy. Like this is a small one, but people employ sometimes a bigger guide scope as well. And when your camera and your telescope is at a very awkward position, maybe it's looking directly at zenith, that can cause unnecessary sag. That can sag and your telescope may not sag, causing flexure into your setup. And also, off-axis guiding is more accurate because you're using the telescopes. Your star will be very close to the object itself. And I hope that was that clear enough.
Yeah. Why do you need to pour a line if you can use the guider to point to the object you want to point at?
Yeah, that's very right, but your mount, you can only send micro signals, very small adjustments to your mount. The autoguide can send only very signals of very short duration to your mount. If you are completely off polar alignment, if you're pointing your telescope towards a different direction altogether, you will have to send very large signals to keep the star into the field of view.
That's not recommended, or that's not.
What?
That's not recommended for.
No, it's not recommended at all, because you want to keep it. You don't want unnecessary slewing rates to arise. You want to keep it minimum as possible. The guiding should be your polar alignment should be good. And the guiding should be just a way to make sure no errors are there. Yeah.
You can tell them about field rotation. That's
Yeah.
polar aligned, you'll have field rotation.
Yeah, and another very important thing is, if you're not polar aligned, your field of view will tend to rotate. It will become very similar to an Altair's mode. Like, you won't be able to photograph very much.
Just write a sketch on the board.
Yeah,
What the field rotation looks like.
yeah. So if this is your sensor, and this is say Andromeda Galaxy. Over the course of time, Andromeda Galaxy might be here. Like the field will rotate internally because you're not aligned to the pole at all, the rotation pole at all. I can stop that. So the next aspect we'll be talking about the setup is the telescope and the lens or whatever. And one important topic which we should cover is focusing. And this can apply to even photography. You can use these techniques even for photography, but they are optimized for astrophotography. The first type of focusing method you can use is visual focusing. So the camera is attached here. You can probably look through the viewfinder and make sure the star is focused with this focuser. Very hard to do. You need to have a very trained eye, and your viewfinder may not be very big and large to make sure it's focused. So the accuracy may be low. The second one is the live view. So if you're using a DSLR, most DSLRs have this feature called live view. You can see the output on the screen. So you can manually zoom in. You can zoom in as well, and you can get a very close-up view of the star, and you can adjust the focus. This is a very useful tool if you're shooting Milky Way. If you're just shooting the Milky Way randomly without any tracking, you can use this method of live view focusing. And it works very well, and it does the job. The next, yeah.
That one itself throws out some light. So
Yeah.
Create some amount of disturbance while
So this is an interesting question. The life of an astrophotographer and a visual astronomer are very different. Like an astrophotographer, you'll be seeing the screen a long part of the night. So your eye adaptation is it's not going to be perfect. So it's not going to make a big difference when you see the screen. Some people can also put a red film over the screen to reduce the intensity of the light and to make you won't lose your sensitivity over red light. And the next type of focusing is a Bastion of Mosque. It was made by this Russian amateur astrophotographer called Pavel Batinov. And it's a very simple design. It looks very complex, but you can print this off the net, you can build it, you can buy it, and you attach this thing, this element, this thing in front of your telescope or your lens. Once you do that, it creates three characteristic diffraction spikes over your bright stars. So you will see, if you're not in focus, you'll see an image like this. If it's focused, you'll see an image like this. If you're again not in focus, you'll see an image like this. So what you're trying to look for in a perfect focus is this spike should be in between the other two spikes. The angle should be similar. There are plenty of software you can use, capture software, which can calculate this angle for you to ensure that your object is in focus. This is a very precise way where you can ensure good focus, is using a Bastion of Mosque. Very simple to build. There are plenty of designs online which you can print, 3D print as well. And you can even, I've seen people trace the object and build it with plastic. It's very simple to do. This is a method of focusing. Another method of focusing is you can use some certain software to achieve a numerical value of the focus of the star. So stars, if a star is in focus, most of its intensity is around a very small area. It's not spread out over a large area like this. So you can, if you plot that into a graph, you can see that the most of the intensity is, the width is very less compared to unfocused star. So software, many software, capture software can provide you a value called full width half maximum. It's a numerical value, which you have to ensure the minimum value to keep the best focus. So if you want very accurate focus, this value has to be minimum. So it depends on a lot of factors, maybe even atmospheric refraction can play a big role in this. So, but I found this to be the most accurate method for focusing. And it comes inbuilt in most of the capture software. I'll give you some open source examples at the end of the talk. But this, I would say, is one of the most easiest methods of focus, where you just read out a number. So you don't have to use sources given by artificial light, like sodium and mercury used in CFLs. And so the transmittance for those wavelengths are very, very low, if you actually notice. So this is a way by which you can effectively avoid some of the light pollution when you're shooting. So you can actually image some things from Bangalore. So this object, can you name it? Okay. So this is the Ring Nebula, and this was taken, this is a single unprocessed exposure. And this was taken from HAL in Bangalore. Very light polluted and with the use of light pollution filters again. So, but if you go to a truly, a light pollution filter is good, but it can never match a true dark sky. The same exposure length from a dark sky, unprocessed, is this. So very similar, no different, same setup, same camera, but look at the difference in the image. It does a good job. Without the light pollution filter, you'll see white. So it does a bit, at least you can see the object, but it's good. So a light pollution filter finds good use, not in Bangalore, but in moderately light polluted environments. So places like, which are relatively close by to Bangalore, say like Nandi Hills or Kanakpura and places like that, where you can get, they're not too far away, not too dark sites, but you can still use light pollution filters there effectively. So far so good. I've been talking a lot about the ideal parts about astrophotography, about the, everything's going well. I've never talked about the problems so far. So let's look a little bit at the problems. The first problem, and I'm sure if any of you have spent time under a night sky looking at the stars, you must have faced this issue. It's dew. Yeah, a lot of people are smiling. So dew can make your night terrible. It can, you absolutely will lose your mind when you, because there has been a time where almost everything in my telescope was completely wet. It was like someone put a bucket of water over me. So dew can really ruin your shot. And I'll explain. So this is a single unprocessed image of comet Catalina taken from Yerigiri in 2016. But this was in one of the nights. And the previous night, there was plenty of dew. And you get shots like this. And where the complete image is, there's no contrast, you can't even see the object correctly. Both are single unprocessed images. I didn't get a complete session because it was very cloudy. But just look at the difference. You can see that the dew plays a very, very serious aspect. And Newtonians technically are not very susceptible to dew. But if the dew there's a tremendous amount of dew in the atmosphere because we live in a very moist environment, South India, it can get to even your secondary mirror and your primary mirrors. So how to avoid dew? For Newtonians and refractors, there is something called dew heaters. You can buy these, you can make these. It's just a metal wire, it's just a resistor, which causes heat and dissipates the dew. Very simple, but again you need some kind of source to power this. And if you're at a truly remote dark sky, it's very hard to get so much power, and it may be hard to do this. A second alternative is something called a dew shield. This is something we constructed in the middle of the night because it was terrible dew and my Autoguide itself was dewing. And that's something which used first actually. And so this is just a chart paper, black chart paper and some cello tape mixed together and to avoid dew. Basically you're increasing the length between the optics and the opening. Your opening of your whatever. The dew has to travel quite a bit of distance. It won't travel that far. So this is an effective method to also stop dew. Many SCT users have made dew shields, and you can even buy dew shields off the market. And also another solution is a hairdryer. This I always carry, even right now I have a hairdryer with me whenever I'm carrying my astrophotography kit. This is an effective method to see dew dissipate. You just see it just like evaporate in front of you. It's a very nice feeling, to watch it happen. And but you have to repeat this every 20 minutes. Otherwise, dew is going to come back again and again. So if you're not sure of a dark sky, of a site and how moist it's going to be, carry this with you. Because in South India, this November, December, Jan, Feb, it's going to be a lot of dew in South India. So plan accordingly. The next thing is wind. I'm sorry to go all the elements, water, wind, and things like that, but wind is a serious problem. And I'm going to illustrate this with a story. So it was March 2015. We were in Kemengundi, the same place where I got the Rosette Nebula. And it was the first time in a really nice dark sky, and we went up the Kemengundi, that Raj Bhavan we talked about, and we set up on top of the mountain. 360-degree view, perfect. I was so happy. It was such a beautiful place. I've set up, I polar aligned, it's 9 o'clock, I spent a lot of time on polar alignment, everything's good. And then the wind started. People say this is a wind sail. You know, like the ones you see on ships, because wind goes here, it's really going to shake it. And you'll ruin your exposures. So there was tremendous wind. At 9 it started, we knew it's going to be a terrible night. So we actually spent 3 hours moving all the stuff back from the top of the mountain to the bottom of the mountain. One of my friends really helped me, and I would really like to congratulate that guy, but I don't think he's here. And so we actually moved that, and we set up at the bottom of the mountain. So around 3 o'clock the next night, it was the first night went well. And the 3 o'clock the second night, I set up a shot. I was imaging the Eagle Nebula, and around 2 o'clock, and I put a imaging run for about 20 exposures, and I went to take a nap. I was very sleepy that day. And when I got out of the car, there was this terrible wind again, and I went and saw my photos, and all my photos look like this. So this is a single raw unprocessed exposure of the Eagle Nebula, Pillars of Creation, if you look at Hubble. So all the photos, this is actually the best among them. Most of them had streaks this big because of the wind. Terrible wind. You can see everything shaking. I was really shocked. Didn't fall over. You know, that much of wind. So wind plays a very crucial role in astrophotography. But thankfully, I went again this year and I was able to correct that shot and take the Eagle Nebula properly from here. And so someone asked me before, like, how to place your car. So cars are very good wind barriers. So if you somehow predict which side the wind is going to come, place your car that side and you make sure you set up right next to that. So this was in Yenagiri. Thankfully there was one more car, so I set up in between those two cars. So there was no wind at all, and I was able to image without that problem with that night. So it's an effective place to put your car. And find other obstacles, maybe a wall. It may not look pretty, it may not feel nice, you know, there's a wall next to you, but you get your shots. You'll make sure there's no wind that shake in your exposures. The next is cable management. So I've not set up this with all the cables, but there are a lot of cables running across, at least more than 6 or 7. So if you leave it unattended in the night, there is a big chance it might snag and it might pull something. I almost broke a USB port of my camera because of that. So cable management is very serious, and you should be able to tape your cables or organize it in a good manner. And finally, again, we talked about this before, is setup placement. Placing your telescope in a very important place, and I'll illustrate that with the image. So this is the Carina Nebula, and if you notice, this part is a bit darker. This is actually the roof of a house, you know, and because of bad placement of the mount at the starting of the night, the roof started getting it in some of the exposures. So a lot of, you know, you should put in a lot of thought before you set up where you're going to set up. And I was not even going to image this object, otherwise I would have planned for it. This was more of a surprise object. I didn't know I was able to see it actually. It was I can actually know the sky. Carina Nebula is very low in the south sky for us. And this is actually the Seagull Nebula, again, one of the exposures. Again, you see completely white because the timing for the shot. You should never image objects when they're too low in the sky. If they're too low in the sky, the effects of atmosphere and light pollution become much more apparent. So when they're above 30 degrees, 40 degrees, the higher the better. But above 40 degrees, you can get a good imaging session. And finally, the software. So there are plenty of software used in astrophotography, and thankfully, a good number of them are open source, so you don't have to sit and pay for them, and you can code and you can modify them to your needs as well. So one such software is APT, Astrophotography Tool. It's an image acquisition tool. You can set imaging runs, you can set your focusing, and you can do plenty of things with this. And it is unlimited free demo. It is a paid software, but they offer completely, all the features are there in the demo, and it's not time restricted. They just ask you for a donation. So they have a nice line here which says, do you want to donate? Do you think that much is paying, that much is free? So I would suggest this software. It's very nice. It's I've been using it for about more than a year, and it's been quite good. The next is EQ mod. So this is a software you must have if you have a mount, equatorial mount. You can completely control your mount from your computer, because once you polar align your mount, you do not want to go 10 feet off the mount, because even a slight shake like this is going to affect the polar alignment. So you move everything with your mount via software after polar alignment. So you can control the mount, see where it's looking at, you can point it at any part of the sky with your laptop, you can plan mosaics, you can do plenty of things with this EQ mode. Again, completely open source, completely free, you can do anything what you want. It's written in C#, so if you want to code it, you can do that as well. And for pointing and like a general planetarium software, I use Carth2CL, Carth2CL, and it's very intuitive, and you can plan your session well. You can see the field of view of the objects you're going to image and how your telescope field of view matches. It's a very, very useful tool, and with this you can control the mount as well. There's good interface to connect mounts as well with this software. Again, this is freeware, open source, very useful. An alternative to this is Stellarium. It's also good, but I don't think the interface with mounts is too nice, so I prefer using this. So, some strange anomalies which I encountered in my two and a half years with Deep-Sky Astrophotography, I'd like to share with you today. The first is aeroplanes. So, a lot of things interrupt your photos. Birds, satellites. Satellites, almost every imaging session you'll see about 5 to 6 satellites, over 10 images. But some really cool aspects are aeroplanes. So this was in Yeligiri in April this year. I actually looked into this, and this is Qatar Airways 945. There's a site called Flight Aware. You can enter your location, you can see which flight was this. So this is Qatar Airways 945, photo bombing Tri-Field Nebula. So it's really nice, and when I took this photo, even Jeffrey was with me when I took this, and it was beautiful. And these are some of the objects you encounter when you're doing astrophotography. The second are very peculiar satellites. So I don't know if you can see this very well. You'll see this one, like dots. Can you see these dots? Like in a very periodic fashion. So this is a very, I don't know, I've still not found what type of satellite this is, but it's a satellite which has these, it's in a periodic way it flashes. I don't know if it uses lights or reflection, or I'm not too sure. But this is one photo, this is another photo. Here again it's, starts here and goes up. So this is a 5-minute exposure. 5-minute exposure that ISO 1600, and so you can actually see the satellite going across your image. It's a very nice feeling when you see this, and I don't know. So this is some of the interesting things you find. And now this is my photo of the Andromeda galaxy, and that's Andromeda here, it's M110 here. And I saw this object. When I first saw this, I thought I discovered a new nebula. I was so excited. I'm like, what is this? It seems so cool. I thought some new nebula sprouted out of nowhere. But I talked to a lot of people. I put this up on groups, and a lot of thought and debate went into this. And finally, it's apparently an internal reflection caused by an off-axis star. The star which is not in the frame is causing this internal reflection to occur like this pattern. Looks really nice. I thought it's a nebulae at first, and it's even there in all my raw photos. So it's not a stacking error or something like that. It's still here. So this is some of the anomalies. But the biggest mystery of my life is this photo. It may look normal, like a normal deep sky photo. Can anyone name this famous gathering of galaxies? Leo triplet, yes. But I'm not interested in all the other galaxies. I'm interested in this galaxy, M66. So I imaged this in January of 2015 in Jaimalvi Blackbuck Reserve near Madhugiri in Karnataka. So it looks, a lot of noise. I was still very amateur back then. I'm still amateur. And but this object, this little circle here, caught my eye. And I looked online. And I looked at other photos of M66 taken by observatories, taken by Hubble. And this object was not to be seen. If you notice these two stars, this star also here, these two stars. You have to look a little bit further, but this little thing is not seen. And till today, I don't know what it is. And it's not just one photo I compared with, I even compared with Hubble's photo. So this is my image. It's still, do you see anything? Do you see any difference? I would like for you to know. I still don't know. You can tell me some. No, so I'll get into it. So I was mind blown. I thought, yes, tomorrow newspaper, Johann Nishant discovers supernova. I thought that. I wrote an email to CB, AAU, that's actually the official, if you discover a comet supernova, you have to email them. I was so excited, I actually sent this email, in fact, she put the date on the email. So I captured some frames and recognition looking at, I think it famous supernova, but Johann Nishant, I gave my address, phone number, everything. I thought, done, it's good, I'm going to be this thing, But I didn't get any reply. I didn't get nothing, But I thought that's the end of it. I thought, okay, maybe I just lost it. It's fine, I'll discover something later. It's okay. But the coolest thing happened, and I still have no explanation for this. So in May 30th, 2016, a supernova erupts in M66, very close to where that same dot was. And look, this is not, maybe, I don't know, maybe you can tell me what it is. I would love to know, maybe we can talk about it. But it's very close to where the original place was. So this is without the supernova, archival image, and this is with the supernova. May 28th, 2016, almost a year and 2 months after I missed that. I still don't know what it is. I don't know, maybe you can tell me, we can talk about it. So that's my mystery in my life, and let's hope something happens maybe in the future over that. So that's been my talk for astrophotography, Deep-Sky Astrophotography. So we have covered most of the things we need. Now we are ready to take shots. So the next talk will be on taking the shot and processing the shot in a more serious softwares and platforms. But before we go, I have been talking for the last 1.5 hours, and I thought I should end with a poem. And so it's by Walt Whitman, and it goes like this. When I heard the learned astronomer, when the proofs, the figures were ranged in columns before me, when I was shown the charts, the diagrams to add, divide and measure them, how soon, unaccountable, I became tired and sick, till rising and gliding out, I wandered off by myself, in the mystical moist night air, and from time to time, looked up in perfect silence at the stars. So I've been talking for a lot. I know if it sounded boring, I'm really sorry to bore you for 1.5 hours or 1 hour 40 minutes, but I strongly recommend each one of you to go to a night sky. Fall in love there, and everything else will follow. You would want to document your photos, the sky after you. The night sky should be your first love. Everything else will follow after that. So that's my talk. I hope it was interesting. Thank you. Any questions, please get started. Any questions?
Yeah. The modern day DSLR usually typically focus only on the RGB color sequence.
Yes.
But when you're observing stars, we have got so many chemicals and so many things out there.
Yes.
Invariably emit different types of lights across the spectrum.
Yes.
And if you were to use this as is, it will not give you the sort of pictures that you would probably want to see. What is it that you would want to get rid of from this camera?
This camera is not modified. I have another camera which is modified. So what that means is, internally there's an IR UV filter, blocker, which blocks out IR and UV light. So if you physically remove that blocker and replace it with just and while this is blocking IR and UV, it also blocks H alpha light, which is given out by all the emission nebulae and many nebulae and even galaxies. A lot of H alpha regions are there. So plenty of, if you actually look at the Rosette Nebula, there's a lot of blue in the middle. That's not supposed to be there. It's supposed to be completely red. But because I used a unmodified camera at that time, I was not able to capture that. So if you physically remove that filter, internal filter, it's a little bit of a process, but it can be done. And it's done by many people. Satya has also done it here. And you can see much more. Your spectrum is enhanced a little bit more. So you can see the H alpha regions and you can see a little bit of the blue region spectrum as well. So there are modifications can be made. I can show you that camera a little bit after this maybe. Any other questions?
What filters are unmodified?
Yeah, so if you use a light pollution filter on an unmodified camera, even at a dark sky, it increases the contrast. So if you imaging emission nebulae, you can actually bring out the reds a lot more with light pollution filters. So it's a very useful tool to use. But it's not very good on galaxies. Galaxies emit light on a more broader wavelength spectrum, and you'll be blocking a lot of those wavelengths as well. So it's not used for galaxies at all.
I have a question.
Yes.
When you adjust the telescope to account for meridian flip,
Yes.
how does that affect the final image that you capture?
Very interesting question. So once you do a meridian flip, your image becomes horizontally like inverted.
Yeah.
So if you're looking like this, you'll see me like upside down. But when you're processing it, you're going to use star alignment. You're resisting each star, so it automatically corrects your date wrong. But you should make sure the field of view is similar. So if you see a star in the first image, make sure you see that star in the second image as well. You should not crop out anything, so you should be very careful on doing a vector flip in that aspect.
So is there stitching the image involved finally?
Stacking isn't, not stitching. Stitching, if you want to do mosaics and large panoramas, you can do stitching.
This polar alignment that you talked about, that you want to manually do before you get into the photographic part. There are no software or something, you just plug it in and say, okay, align it for me.
There is actually a similar thing like that called Polestar. QHY makes this tiny attachment which goes right here, and it locates the pole star for you. It solves where the pole star is and what exact corrections you have to make, and it makes it a lot more simpler. And there are also other software you can use based on, it's called Astrophotography, where you image twice, it's a concept called plate solving. So you look where you take an image, your computer solves each one of the stars of the image. It like does a little bit of astrometry and tells you which star is here, which star is here. And it moves a certain distance and does the same thing again. And sees, if I move this much, am I at the right place? And if I'm not, it will tell me what corrections I have to do to the azimuth and altitude post for alignment. It's a very interesting software to do for alignment with. It's very new, not very done by a lot of people. Any other question? So, how many of you are going to do, if the season is going to start, I hope it's going to start sometime soon. How many of you are going to take up even beginner astrophotography this year? Awesome, yeah. Oh, yeah. I hope I was able to convince you. If I'm not, I strongly recommend you to accompany me to one of these visits, and I'll show you by hand why you should join this fantastic one. Any other doubts? Huh? Yeah, what?
Can you take any apprentice?
Yeah, please join. Yeah, it's always good to have a good company and go on.
Always be an assistant first.
Yeah.
How do we register for?
One more of your other sport where caddies are welcome.
Yeah. It's fine. They're also getting to see the night sky, right? So definitely, it's like some sort of payment we need to get. Yeah.
How do we register for being your assistant?
No, please come along. One Facebook message is all you need. Just tell me, and I would love to. That's all you need.
When are you going next?
So for me, I try to go every new moon, and this year I want to maximize that. So every new moon time, at least 4 nights, I want to spend.
So when are you going next?
Hopefully, if next week is clear. There's no way it's going to be clear, but next week is the new moon, right? Yeah.
Okay, after that?
The next new moon after that, like the next month's new moon. Yeah. So around the new moon time, 2 days before, 2 days after, I hope to be at a dark sky.
There was some question around the power source for this.
Yeah. So yeah.
Apart from using the car battery, is there anything else?
So I carry a 150 ampere hour inverter battery with an inverter, and I use an AC adapter for my mount, AC adapter for my camera, AC adapter for laptop, mobile charger, everything. So it's a little cumbersome. We cover this a little bit in the first. You need good friends to carry it along with you, but it gets the job done.
That's why Chidu is being invited.
Yeah. Yes.
Is there an object that you would like to see again and again?
It's like a tradition every year. I try to do Orion Nebula and Andromeda Galaxy every year, again and again.
It's bad luck.
Yeah. Yeah. But those are the two objects I like to do again and again. Okay, yeah, that's
That question was from Deep-Sky object.